Good evening.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to Let's Try This Again
Yeah.
on a Monday evening. Let's try this again. Let's try this again.
So, if you were not with us yesterday, we actually started this yesterday, right? So we are here nightly until when? Saturday?
Yes.
At 7 p.m. So every day this week, you can join us in the evening at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. We will be sharing with you for about 40 minutes or so on different topics. And of course, we are talking about let's try this again because relationships sometimes need a reboot.
They certainly feel like they do.
Yeah,
I know I want to reboot
Hey, I know that's right. Okay. So last night, if you were not here with us, that's okay. You can go back and watch it on the church's Troy SDA Church YouTube channel. So make sure you go back there and you subscribe. Don't just watch, subscribe, and you can share it with people. You can send it to them. You can even tell them to come join us tonight. And as we have been going on, we're also picking up momentum because we want to actually hear from you guys. So you should be able to make comments, right?
Yes. I believe you're able to make comments.
Mm-hmm.
We're still getting the hang of some things, but
Yes.
by God's grace, we'll be sailing along. By the time Saturday comes, we won't want to stop because we'll be so good at doing what we're doing.
Hopefully that's the goal.
But yeah, we certainly want to hear from you.
Yes.
We want you to ask questions. We want you to make comments as much as you can.
Yes. And we're also going to have a question and answer period. I think that's probably going to be on Saturday night, right?
Yes.
So even if you aren't able to make each night, although we hope you are, you can ask questions. All right. And we're going to do our best to answer those questions on Saturday, not because we're experts or we have all the answers, but hey, we're going to attempt to do our best to try to, figure things out. And we actually have some people joining us this week, don't we?
Yes, we do have a couple of special guests that are going to be joining us.
Yeah.
One is going to be joining us to talk about mental health and addiction and how those things can affect people that we're in relationships with. And the other guest, we don't quite know yet what we're going to talk about, but
it's going to be good.
We may talk about some shame, some different things like that and how they affect relationships.
Yeah.
But Tamara, why don't you give us a quick just overview of what we talked about for our friends who were here last night and for those who maybe are joining us for the first time?
Yes. So last night we were talking about being self-aware. And of course, many of us believe that we are, but we found out statistically, there was a study that was done with 5,000 people. And in that study, it discovered that 10 to 15% of people actually are not.
Well,
right?
Actually, no. Only 10 to 15.
Only 10 to 15%.
Only 10 to 15% of people are self-aware.
Are self-aware.
Yeah.
And so that was very interesting. We also found out that there were two different types, right, of self-awareness. Who knew, right?
Right.
There was the
internal self-awareness
and the external self-awareness. All right. And then we talked about how that fits into the experience of power, right? How experience and power play a part in self-awareness.
Right. Those who have power tend to be less self-aware. And I was thinking about this yesterday. For me as a parent, and in my position as a parent in my home, I have the power, so to speak. And as a result of that, I am less aware of how my children see me than I am of how I see my children and what my goals are, what my vision is for the way I want my home to operate, so forth and so on. And I thought about how in a lot of homes, this is the tension that plays itself out.
Yeah.
Because as our children become adults, then children begin to reflect on how they seen their parents.
Yeah.
And their parents are like, who are you talking about? That wasn't me. No, I never did that.
Right.
And Tamara, you and I have talked about this. In fact, we were talking about it just the other week.
Yeah.
And that is that our children cannot see the intentions of their parents.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I may have all these great intentions for raising my children, but the fact of the matter is that my children don't see those and they don't hear those necessarily through the way that I parent.
And that's really a powerful thing because I think for any maybe most parents, I've been there, maybe you've been there, where you see yourself, where you think you see yourself, and you know your motives and your intentions. And so you expect that the people in your life should know. How many of us have heard that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You should know better than to think that I would,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know what I meant. And we make a huge mistake in believing as parents that our children who actually are living an abstract life, right? Meaning they are our children. They're not us.
Right.
And so how could they possibly know what our intentions are? How could they possibly fully understand, right?
Yeah. The other part of that is the conversation that I've had with myself about not only my children, but the other relationships I'm in. That conversation is so real, so poignant that it almost seems like, well, wait a minute, didn't we talk about this before?
Yeah.
No, you didn't talk about it with someone else. You had the conversation with yourself. I had the conversation with myself. And it seems so real that it must have taken place as an external conversation, but no, it was just in my head.
That's powerful that we could actually have those experiences, right? That we really believe we've actually interacted with people on a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually really have not. And that can create conflict. We're going to talk about that. We're going to go there. Okay.
Yeah. So power, those who have power,
yes,
as well as those who have experience, the richer and more diversified our experiences, the less we tend to doubt ourselves, the more we tend to depend on our experiences and what they have been. But if I am dependent on my experiences, then I'm not listening to you.
Wow.
I'm not taking your input because I know better. I know better.
And it also sounds to me like there's a certain level of community that is required in order for us to be self-aware.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the external portion of it.
Yeah.
So while some people may be strong on internal self-awareness, I know what I think, or
how I feel,
or how I feel, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very much in tune with that. But I don't know how the people around me see me.
Ooh,
I
so
don't
how
know
I show up.
How I show up in relationships.
I had a very interesting experience with that recently, and it was an experience that helped me to mature, and it actually kind of forced me to do something, which is to be self-reflective in how I speak and how I talk and my tone, and all those things like that. I don't know if you've been there, and maybe someone has shared with you like, man, when you spoke to me this way, it sounded this way. You're just like, wow, I didn't know I show up that way. Right. But that takes a lot of humility. And it takes prayer, right?
Yes.
We're going to get more into that later. Also, when we talked about self-awareness, we talked about the importance of not just why, but what.
Yes.
What?
So a lot of times we ask the why question.
Yeah.
Why do I feel this way? But what we discussed a little bit last night is why is not a question that needs to be completely disregarded, but a better question is what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So what happens? So let's say, for instance, that there is, or I think this is the example I used yesterday. I have a review on my job, and my review comes up kind of bad, and man, why did I get a bad review? Like, why does this person always seem to give me a bad review? And I go down that rabbit hole instead of asking, what can I do to improve? What things did I do that were obvious to my employer that caused me to get, negative marks?
Yeah.
So once we begin to ask those what questions, they can lead us to be more self-aware and actually to take more positive steps.
Again, we'll get into that more later. Also, lastly, which was really an important part about yesterday, talking about being self-aware, was that it actually can be problematic.
Yes.
Who knew, right? Because the words get thrown around, like you need to be more self-aware. You know what I'm saying? But it's like there are some people who say, "I am self-aware. I am."
To our own detriment. To our own detriment. So yeah, what we talked about is that for those who suffer from anxiety and depression, there's a self-awareness that is borderline dangerous.
Yeah.
I'm so self-aware that I can't stop thinking about the way I show up. I can't stop thinking about my, my faults and my flaws and so forth. So something that is positive can actually come up negative in some people's experiences.
Yeah. So that was yesterday. If you didn't get a chance to watch it, go back and take a look at it. It's there. All right. But now we're moving on.
Today we're going to talk about something that actually it kind of flows, at least at least in my mind, it flows from being self-aware.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about this. We touched on this yesterday too. Awareness means to have a perspective on something. And we talked about the challenge being when my perspective or a perspective becomes the perspective. So conflict takes place. Conflict takes place when my perspective and yours don't match.
Ooh.
We're at the business table,
yeah,
or the dinner table,
yeah,
or the family table, whatever it is,
any table,
and I'm sharing a perspective,
yeah,
which, by the way, I believe is the right perspective, the best perspective, and I'm sharing it for your benefit, so that once you see this, all these mystical changes are going to take place, because now you see the light.
Yeah.
And as I share it with you, and I'm extremely confident, you begin to share your perspective with me, about which you are extremely confident. And there is a place for conflict.
Okay. Now, one of the things we always say to people is this, and I'm not saying that I've always felt this way. It has taken many, 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 many years. And there are some days I question myself, but I know that conflict is actually not a bad thing. It really isn't. It is actually a part of everyday life. We are conflicted about when we're faced with making choices and decisions. We are conflicted in our relationships when you do feel differently than I do, right? It is a part of what happens, and it actually is a good thing for us. Why do you think conflict is good?
It's because it helps us in terms of, or it can help us.
It can.
It can help us. See, if I run away from conflict and I avoid it like the plague, then I can't benefit from it. But conflict can be a good thing. It can help us with having a different perspective.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So my self-awareness can interact with your self-awareness, and it can broaden my perspective, not only on a particular incident or a particular project, but both of our awareness can be broadened about ourselves.
So it's true that when you have conflict and you're self-aware, and these self-awarenesses, as you said, come together and they collide, it can broaden. So that sounds to me like we don't always have to agree. So that's a myth, you would probably say, right? That a lot of people have when it comes to that one of us has to win.
But we're going to touch on that a little bit later, I think, because, which is a crazy thing, the conflict itself, when the conflict itself is not, it's not really about who's right, but it's about who wins.
Ooh.
Now, that may sound conflicting, but it's possible for me to be wrong and win.
As long as I win.
Right. And so we'll share we'll share an instance that hopefully can lend itself to helping you to see how that's even possible. But
now, I just want to point out, I know y'all might see us looking over to the corner or something. It's because we actually can see you guys, your comments. Okay. So if you want to make a comment, feel free to do so in the chat underneath in the YouTube section. If you're on the Facebook page of Stamina, you can also make a comment there and we'll be able to see it, hopefully. All right. Okay. So again, conflict and coming face to face with the realities of what makes it difficult, right? Is when you talked about the winning aspect or what's right, and that I can win but not be right. Yeah. I can win but not be truthful, right? And that's kind of dangerous, you know?
Yeah, by the way, it's difficult to be a part of a team if you want to win and be right all the time.
Teamwork.
It's difficult to be a part of a team. It's difficult to be a part of a family. It's difficult to be in a marriage. It's difficult to have a friendship with someone who always wants to be right and always wants to win.
It's probably exhausting. You know, I would see that probably creating chasms between, like, I don't even want to talk to that person. You know, I don't want to communicate with that person. Another thing that comes up in the realms of conflict when we are dealing with the struggles of being self-aware is that there's this dangerous thing that can happen called labeling. Right. We did a workshop one time where we had couples sit together and we had them to write a name or a phrase, right? And stick it on their spouse's forehead. Now, their spouse can't see the label, okay? But I can see it because it's what I've given you. And so when I look at you and I put that label on your forehead, every time we have a discussion or we have a conflict or whatever's happening, I'm very aware of the label that I put on your head, and maybe vice versa. Now, why is that not a good thing? Labeling.
It's not a good thing because you're not the person that you were last week. And you're not the same person that you were last year.
Yeah.
You're not the same person you were 5 years ago.
Now, I personally think I'm the exact same.
Now, your social security number is the same. Your driver's license is the same. You know, your fingerprints are the same. But when I say that she's not the same person, what we mean is that you are maturing, you're growing, your perspectives are shifting and changing and becoming more nuanced. And so if I'm approaching you today as though you're still the same person you were
that label
2 years ago, the way I labeled you 2 years ago or even 2 months ago, then it's unfair to you. And I'm not really engaging with you. I'm engaging with the person that I knew in the past.
Ooh, what do we call that?
Shadow boxing.
Shadow boxing, right? Shadow boxing. Oh, we'll talk about that another time. But now I am engaging with something that is from the past. I am engaging with something that is not necessarily in the present. Now, the truth is we never forget, do we? For the most part, we don't forget our interactions with people. They lodge themselves within our brains. Even if we don't remember them immediately, they're tucked away back in the recesses. And sometimes we have experiences that trigger, right, these things, and things come up. And so we respond. And have you ever we've had that experience, right? Where we're having a conflict and it's just like, man, maybe I bring something up or you bring something up from, like, what does that have to do with right now? Right?
But in my mind, it makes all the sense in the world. It has everything to do with right now.
It has everything.
And if you would only understand this, because this I have fit in my mind, I fit your present behavior, your present attitude, your present idea. I have fit that into a pattern, and that pattern is, it fits that label that I have for you. This is who my wife is. This is who my boss is. This is who my mom is, my uncle, my aunt, my brother, my children.
Neighbors.
This is who they are. And so I'm fitting you into this pattern, and I'm interpreting all of your present day behavior in the light of everything that's taken place in the past.
Wow. So this can become cyclical. It can become a practice. And you know what happens once we get into this dance, right? It can become tiresome, but it's all we know, you know? And so we go back and forth with this same dance, and this is what ends up happening ultimately with labeling. There are many components to how this can play out, but one of the ones that we think is very dangerous is we stop listening. We stop listening to one another. When I look at you and I see, matter of fact, I actually cannot even hear you. What is it? Charlie Brown, the teacher? They used to come on, wah, 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 wah. I'm looking at the label that I have of you. Maybe it is mistrust, right? Maybe it is hurt or pain or infidelity, or it could be a myriad of things, disappointment, disagreement, whatever, right? That has happened in our relationships. And I am constantly viewing you based on that label that is on you. So much so that I can't even hear what you're saying to me.
Right. And this is profound in the context of conflict, because the person I'm in conflict with is actually not even here.
Oh, now hold on now.
See, because I'm not listening to you. And in my mind, the you that I'm talking with is this person from, so many, months or weeks or even years ago, that it makes it kind of weird and strange, because how can we ever process through conflict if I'm not actually even engaging with the quote unquote the real you?
Whoa.
So if anybody's ever been engaged in ongoing conflict that seems to never have an end, and you're wondering, how can we never get out of this? Why is it that, my workplace or my family or my marriage or my friends, how is it that we seem to never be able to navigate out of this? We're always in this tense place, and we can never get out of it. And one of the reasons might be because we're communicating not with one another, but we're communicating, or we're shadow boxing with this person that we have created from the past.
So it sounds like then that it would be important to resolve, right? I think too often what we end up trying to do is we try to end up moving forward without actually dealing with we often talk about baggage. It could be hurt, pain, disappointment, mistrust, disagreement, whatever, right? When we feel as though that's not a necessity to deal with, we can just move forward. You're actually dragging those old things with you, and it's only waiting for the opportune time to show up, or actually the most unopportune time, right? So would you say that it is effective for us to, whereas all possible, to deal with that conflict? And I'm talking about past conflicts, because if you don't, they'll resurface.
Yeah, and they will cause bitterness and resentment and whatnot. The Bible says that we should be slow to speak.
Slow and sweet. No.
Slow to speak.
Yeah.
Right. But we should be swift to listen. Right. And to actually hear what the other person is saying, and not just hear what they're saying, but hear who they are, so that we can engage who they are.
Yeah.
Not who we've created them or labeled them to be.
Now, the truth about the whole conflict thing and listening, some of us have created these systems for ourselves, right? And no matter how dysfunctional they may be, it's what we're used to operating in, right? And so what would you say about a person or people who are dealing with something that seems to just be so natural that they actually enjoy the conflict? And they don't label it as conflict. They maybe call it, what would you say?
Yeah, it's just normal.
Yeah.
It's just
I'm
normal.
helping. This is that you need me to be here to help because there's a problem. And,
Yeah, so there are some as interesting as this may sound, there are some relationships that we're in, and we have a system going. So for instance, you and I work side by side, and you don't do the best job, but I pick up for your slack, and I do my job, and I do 80% of your job as well. I'll never complain. I'll never complain, and I'll never try to get you demoted or even necessarily encourage you to do better, because you're giving 20% actually makes me feel better about myself. So I feel more successful because I'm doing my job and yours. The crazy thing is the conflict comes in at a unique time, and that this is it. When you become a better person, I actually have conflict with you, because I need you to be this person who's only, giving 20% and I'm covering the 80%, because that makes me feel better about myself. So you becoming better actually is a point of conflict.
Oh,
this
wow.
happens not only in the workplace,
it
also happens in marriage relationships. It also happens in those who have people who are who deal with alcohol and drug addiction.
Yeah.
It's labeled codependency.
Okay.
So I need you to be broken
in order for me to feel whatever it is.
In order for me to feel good about fixing you or helping you. But when you get healthy, I got a problem.
I don't like that.
Yeah. I'm not. It's not a good thing for you to be better.
Yeah.
Because now who am I going to fix?
Right.
So this relationship doesn't work anymore.
Man, that I see how that can play out in a lot of different areas of life. I think about work environments, right? Work environments where there seems to just always be a constant conflict. You know what I'm saying? And that there are some work environments who thrive. Now, I use that loosely because you're actually not thriving like that. But maybe, do any of you recognize something like that? Like you work someplace and it's just like, man, this place is toxic. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody's complaining, or there's always something negative or something bad. And it's like, man, nothing goes right unless we're complaining or talking about something or someone, you know? And oftentimes maybe what might happen in those situations is, like you said, if we keep this toxicity going, it prevents people from seeing maybe I actually really don't know what I'm doing, or maybe at least I don't feel like I'm as good as I could be. And so if I don't allow people to see that, and I talk about other people, or I complain about, everything else, then it'll keep the eyes off of what maybe I might be feeling or thinking about myself.
Yeah. Oh man, it's a crazy experience, but I think it's one that many of us are actually living in. We're living in. I see a comment that was made. There seems to be a fine line between labeling. There seems to be a fine line between labeling and tailoring a message for your audience. I think there's a bit of a difference, because we can tailor a message for our audience, to the comment based on who we believe the audience to be. But the labeling that we're talking about,
and let me just say, and most times the audience that we're coming to present to, they've requested for us to come and tailor a message, right? A message is something that I think is quite different than, we're coming to this place and we're having a conflict. You know what I'm saying? So
So this labeling is something that takes place within the context of a relationship, either with a smaller group or individuals. And this is who I believe these individuals to be. But I think there probably is some cross-pollination, if you will, from that. So the next thing we wanted to move on to, go ahead, Tamara.
We are going to move on to crisis and critique in relationships.
But I'm sorry, I just gave you and told you that. But before that, we want to ask you guys a question.
Oh yeah.
And the question, can you go ahead and read that for us, Tamara?
Right here, right?
Yes.
Do you have the ability, knowledge, or skill, right, to communicate and get what you need? Again, do you have the ability, knowledge, and skill to communicate and get what you need from another person or individual? For example, the love you need, the cooperation you need, the respect you need, or whatever has you, in that particular capacity.
So we want, if you have the ability, if you're on YouTube or Facebook and you can actually make a comment, just say yes or no.
And if you feel like you do, how do you normally communicate and get what you need from your loved one or from the people at your job or what have you,
Yeah, and this is a fascinating question, because I know somebody is listening and they're like, well, why should I have to tell people that I'm in a relationship if I need love? I mean, why should I have to say that?
You should know already.
Right. I mean, if we're in relationship, there are certain things that they should
already know.
Intrinsically, this is a part of the relationship. They should be aware of it. They should know it. So what do you think? Do you have the ability, knowledge, or skill to communicate and get what you need, be it respect, cooperation, love, etc.?
Yes. So again, talking about conflict in relationships. And I think it was important that we wanted to bring up how this can happen, particularly in relationships, being parents, even a job or at your school, right? At their best, when they're adults, your children, right? Sometimes our children can end up in crisis. Would you agree? I know I've been someone's child who's been in crisis, And when you are used to being in a role, when we talked earlier about power, right? You talked about that, how self-awareness there's some power and, some dynamics of experience. And so you see yourself as the one who has experience. You see yourself as the one who has had power over this little life, right? But this little life is growing and it is maturing over time. And it can become a source of conflict when that little life is no longer looking to you for all of its answers, to direct them in every single aspect of their life, And so you find yourself in a challenging situation where you're in conflict, You're in conflict.
As we were talking about this, I found it fascinating that, and these are some unhealthy things we're talking about now. That's not all we're going to talk about, but these are some unhealthy things. I found it fascinating that that there are some parents who actually would rather their adult children were in crisis.
Ooh.
Because if my adult child is in crisis, then I can be restored to the position of savior, provider, caregiver, this,
everything,
that, and the other. Right. I can become. And so can you imagine a situation where a parent is almost expectant or hopeful that a marriage doesn't work out, that a job doesn't work out?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That whatever their adult child is trying doesn't work out, so that they can come back and this parent can be reestablished in this position. You know, it's really quite sick. If you're honest, if we're honest, it's really a
you know what, there's some sophisticated words that are thrown around, right, in counseling and things of that nature. One that comes to my mind is spousification. Right. Sometimes we enter into conflict because that child becomes the confidant, right, or the spouse that I wish I had, whether it's a young man or a young woman, right? Because I pour into them and I tell them everything, and they're giving me back the love and the, you know what I'm saying, all of those things that I feel like I should have been getting from whether the spouse that I either never had or the one I have, but that's not giving it to me. And so we can develop these. It's called an unhealthy attachment, right? Because the parent-child relationship is built to grow. I'm not saying that the love severs, but we are supposed to be able to release, right, the quivers, release them from the quiver so that they can go.
Well, wait a minute. There is this passage in the book of Genesis. For this cause shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife. So this doesn't mean that, the son or the daughter don't still love their family of origin, but they are beginning their own family. I think it's interesting you talked about spousification, because really it's the inflicting of trauma unconsciously on a child, because there are some conversations that a child just quite
should
frankly,
not be privy to.
They're not ready for.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're not ready for that conversation. And when they're hearing this,
they're
listening like, what am I supposed to say?
Now we've been there.
Unfortunately, it's like, how am I supposed to respond to this? Like,
man.
So those are some unique things. So we have to be able to let go.
Now, let me tell you something. This is what I found that ends up happening in those types of situations. And I'm learning because we have recently, developed a young adult and still have another one coming along, and having to, relinquish and let go. And I remember you having that conversation like, Tamara, you can't talk to him like he gay. You know what I'm saying? You can't talk to him. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. He's 20. He's about to be 21. Like, I really have to check myself. I really have to. So it's not easy, let me say this. For some, it's easier than others, and yet at the same time, you realize that it is a necessity in order for them to be able to. Now, this is the thing. When you don't allow it, either one or two things are the repercussions of this. What do you think those two things are?
I don't know. You tell me.
One is they stay forever or too long. You know what I'm saying? And you get mad and bitter and resentful, and you start complaining, and you create this conflict, right? Or they run from you because you won't let go, right? They run from you. So we find ourselves in this battle, and I personally feel like it takes the almighty hand of God to give you wisdom as a parent, to know when, right? And the what and the how and the why of that. Because if you don't, there can be this long-standing conflict. Yeah.
So we want to jump, and thank you all for commenting. Yes. Sister Kiana and Sister Vivian. We see you.
Hey,
yes.
Hey.
It's very true to your point, Sister Jordan, that, if we want, the person we're in relationship with, if we want them to be able to have a broadened perspective, then it is important for us to be able to share. To share with them. Look, these are the things that I need from you. But again, so many people don't do that because our expectation is that, they should know. They should know already.
And I wouldn't even say is that we always go to that default. I think sometimes we really don't even know how to express to people, right?
This is true.
We don't. And we're going to talk more about that tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to be talking about what? Communication.
So look, it's a vulnerable thing for you to tell someone that you work with, someone that you're married to. It's a vulnerable thing for you to say, hey, I need this from you.
Woo! How do you feel about that? How do y'all feel about telling somebody that you need? Do you like it? Yes or no? See it in the comments, okay? Yes or no? All right. So we were talking about labeling and the dangers of that, and it stops us from being able to listen and to rightly hear, right? Let's see here.
We want to jump to some steps before we let you go this evening. Some steps to help as we are processing through conflict. What's one of the first steps that can help, Tamara?
Take ownership. And let me tell you, it sounds easy to say, but it is probably one of the hardest things for anyone in humanity to do. You know, I'm not even excluded from that. Especially when you feel like you're right. Ooh-wee. Right. When you just know what you know that you know, and they should know what you know that you know that they know that you know. Okay. So, taking ownership. Now give them a breakdown of what that can actually practically look like. Because some people are like, I do take ownership, but they was wrong.
Yeah. So, what we do is when trying to just take people through practical steps is we say, listen, the person you're in conflict with, let's just imagine that they are responsible for 99%, 99.9% of the conflict. And what we would like you to do is we want you to just process what is that 1% or that 0.01% that you could have done different, better or more. And, you know, when you put it like that, 99.9, it's like, yeah, they are responsible for the majority of it. But what we're asking for is just such a little small, and not that you were wrong, but what could you have done different, better, or more? And that is the first step. That's the first step towards taking ownership. Now, in reality, you might be the one that's responsible for 85% of the conflict. But you're not going to go from 0 to 85 just like that. So we got to start somewhere and begin to get the individual to process, or we need to begin to process, is there anything that I could have done different, better, or more?
Now, we also believe, because we are Christians, and we believe that there is a component of taking responsibility in any communication, right, that you're having with someone, and when you're dealing with conflict, that should always require prayer. So if you are a person who believes in prayer, we believe that that's one of the first steps that you can take when you're in conflict with someone. That, in fact, in Psalms 139, 23-24 says, search me, O God, know my heart, try me, test me, talk to me, and know my thoughts. And so what that is denoting is I'm coming to God and I'm saying, okay, Lord, it is possible that in my frame of mind and how I'm seeing this and how I'm hearing this, that I may have missed something, that I may not have heard things the proper way. So go ahead and try me, God. Show me, talk to me. And that's one of the things that I love about I'm learning over time is before you reply, right? Pray.
Don't press the send button. Do not press the send button.
Whoa. Let me tell you something. With the power of prayer before you send. Okay? Because how many of us have replied based off of these heavy, dark emotions? You feel attacked and it's like, no, let me actually see whether or not what this person says is actually true. Now, I don't know about y'all. I wasn't raised that way. I wasn't raised to think like that. You know what I'm saying? At all.
Just defend
first. But how many conflicts have just spread out and just kept on because we refuse to actually stop and pray and say, okay, you know what? Before I respond, let me actually take this to the foot of the cross, right? Now, for those of you who may not be Christians, or maybe you have no faith or any religious activity, or you don't believe in God, you may think about this in the realms of meditation, right? And stopping and taking a moment to gather your thoughts. Whatever it is that you may believe, I'm going to tell you, it is a valuable thing to not reply or respond when you are in a conflict right away.
Okay, we gotta hurry up. Okay. And we got a couple of things we want to drop on you.
Here's another one.
Here's another one. When it comes to settling conflict, let's remember, for those, this is especially for those who are conscious or aware or are in relationship, not just with people, but in relationship with God. Listen to this. the vocabulary that God uses is people.
Oh.
So you mentioned the importance of prayer and what have you, and a lot of times we're praying and we want God to just speak to us and just open the heavens, or send the ravens, or make a donkey talk, or whatever the case may be. And in reality, God's vocabulary, it includes other human beings.
Yes.
So God will answer our prayers.
Yes.
He will speak to us
and
show us the nature of our conflict, the part we have to play, as well as the part that others have to play. But he does that. And what he uses as his alphabet, so to speak, is he uses other people.
I'm going to tell you, you can't get away from it. You can try. Sometimes when we're in conflict with people, we just say, man, you know what? I'm going to separate myself. I am going, trust me. So I've been there. Like, you know what? I ain't communicating with this person ever again. They're sick and they got a problem. I'm done with it. But however, humility is, you know what? God, I know that you use people. You put us in community for a reason. I am not the best. I don't understand, or I'm not the best judge of myself. So therefore I need to be willing to hear, right, the critiques or the input from the other people you put in my life. So the vocabulary of God is people. Have mercy.
Yeah. Now let me, we want to share this quotation with you. Let me, there we go. This is from a book called The Soul of Shame. A necessary element of guilt is the assumption of empathy. In order for me to feel guilt, I must in some way simultaneously feel the pain I have caused for another. In this sense, guilt tends to draw my attention to another and is often accompanied by a desire to resolve the problem by being closer to him or her. So when I've done something or said something and your facial expression changes, or the facial expression of my children changes, or my parents or my siblings, I'm like, hey, what happened? Is it something I said or something that I've done? And I want to draw close to you so that I can tear down whatever walls or bridges or whatever have been built. So guilt has this element of empathy, the author suggests. But listen to what he goes on to say. Admitting a wrongdoing, seeking and being offered forgiveness, right? Shame, on the other hand, separates me from others as my awareness of what I feel is virtually consumed with my own internal sensations. Furthermore, they are related, that is shame and guilt, and that I will sense shame in addition to the guilt I feel when I do something wrong. Hence, in one sense, guilt stands on shame's shoulders. Again, the book, The Soul of Shame by Dr. Kurt Thompson. Man, this is it's a profound thing. And what it suggests to our friends and to us is that one of the underlying things that deals with unresolved conflict or ongoing conflict, again, we stated this earlier, is not who's right or wrong, but it's actually the shame that exists underneath. So guilt will say, hey, look, let's talk about this. What's going on? Did I do anything wrong? How did I offend you? Shame, on the other hand, says, let's keep our distance because I don't want you to see that I am flawed. I don't want you to see that I am undone. Right? So I fear that you will actually see, this is what shame does. I fear that you will actually see the worst things that I believe to be true about myself.
It's crazy. I'm looking at this comment. I think Vivian wrote, she said, I can see it. You don't have to click on it. Don't speak in anger, but after you reflect after you reflect and you're calm. I actually had an experience like that with someone recently where we were having, we were in a room and we were having a discussion. And man, when I tell you I was frustrated, exasperated, all of the edits that you can think of, and I found myself and I was loud and I was just getting frustrated and it came through my tone. And it was later in reflecting, one, the person bringing it to my attention, and two, even praying and saying, okay, God, what could I have done differently? You know what I'm saying? And I look back on it and I was like, man, you know what? When you find yourself in those situations, remove yourself before you allow yourself to actually go there. If you sense that it's even a possibility that it can go, there's nothing wrong with saying, man, you know what? let me go ahead and let's either postpone this, right? Or let's do this at a different time. Let me go ahead and spend some time in prayer, or just, man, look, they say don't ever do those types of things when you're hungry, when you're tired. You got to be self-aware, right? And so that's so true. Talking about conflict, right?
So, I want to go ahead.
Oh man, I know we only got a few more minutes left, but I want to talk about some biblical examples. And the reason why we love using biblical examples, in fact, too.
Let's close on this one. Let's close on this one right here.
I love using biblical examples because I really feel like there are examples in scripture that literally apply to everyday life. There is nothing that we go through that is not addressed, and conflict is definitely addressed scripturally. And we want to talk to you about something that takes place in 2 Chronicles 35. What is that?
So the king was Josiah. He was the king of Judah. Pharaoh Necho was coming down, and he was going to a battle, not with Judah, but with another nation. And Josiah was going out to join. And Pharaoh Necho said, hey, look, don't come and bother with me. This has nothing to do with you. Your God, in fact, has sent me to go and to handle this business over here. And Josiah's response, because we've been talking about God's vocabulary, his alphabet is actually other human beings.
Yeah.
Josiah's response was, if God wanted to speak to me, he would most certainly not speak to me through you. After all, you worship another God or other gods. I consider you to be a pagan. And there are plenty of prophets that are running around out here in Judah. So why would God choose to speak to me through you? Josiah, who was considered in the biblical narrative to be a good king, he made a fatal mistake in the fact that he forgot that the same God who was able to speak through prophets could also speak through kings. In fact, he could speak through anyone that he wanted to.
No. What you indicating there is that God can use somebody that I don't like.
Oh.
That God can use somebody that I feel like don't believe what I believe, don't eat the way I eat, talk the way I talk, walk the way I walk, not my same color, not my same gender. God can use somebody on the street. He can use an addict. He can use a drunk. He can use a child. He can use anybody.
Yes.
To tell me something about me.
That's right.
Oh God. Oh,
but
Lord.
It comes from the important thing is to remember when he uses anybody to tell me something about me, the message is from him.
Oh.
So the message it wasn't concocted and brewed up in the mind of the person on the street, my enemy, my child, my da-da-da. No. The message ultimately comes from him.
I think that's powerful. And I like the fact that it also goes back to something that I think we were talking about earlier. I think there's room for us in our communities. And when I say communities, God has put us in a lot of different communities. For those of us who have the beauty of being a child and have parents, right? That's a community. Those of us who God has blessed to go on and go to school or get jobs, right? We're working with people. We're in a community there. We have communities in our churches or in the places of worship. We have community in our communities, our neighbors and our friends that we see on the streets, right? We have community in so many different respects. And to think that within those communities, regardless of wherever they are, that God has intended for us to have an experience that allows us, right, to be able to have those same people, not only that we get to share with them our thoughts about them, right? But it is humbling to know that those people also have a perspective about us and that we are not the greatest judge of ourselves, that we need to be willing to allow God to use whoever that he needs to in order for us to grow, because that's really what it's about, right? In order for us to grow and mature and to heal even.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So some of the things that keep us from being able to end conflict, our own personal shame, our lack of prayer, our inability to realize that God uses people.
Yeah.
Sometimes the very people we are in conflict with. Right. And then, of course, our inability to own that 1%. That 1% or that 0.01%.
But if you're praying, I'm telling you, God gives you more than that 1%. That's humility. You know what I'm saying? God always brings you to that place like, yeah, it's a little bit more.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. So speaking of prayer, why don't you have a word of prayer for us?
Yeah.
As we close, we want to say thank you to those of
Yes.
you who joined us tonight.
Yeah.
Remember, tomorrow night, 7 p.m., our topic is communication. Communication.
Yes.
So would you pray for us, Tamara?
Yes, let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you so much for the opportunity you've given us to be with our friends tonight. Thank you for your wisdom and your guidance, Lord. We desperately need it as we are literally trying to limp through life and communicate and deal with relationships and communities. Lord, we all can say that we enjoy when things are going great and going right. But it is when conflict arises that it is a challenge oftentimes for us to recognize not only how to handle it, but the part we play. I ask that you would give us all wisdom, give us humility, Lord. Help us to know that we don't have to deal with it alone, that you are available and that we can pray to you for the help we need. I pray, Father, that tonight anyone who is watching and bearing any burdens or any conflicts in their lives, I pray that they walk away with something good, something that is useful, a tool that they can go back and self-reflect. Help us, Father, to continue to grow, and we look forward to seeing everyone again tomorrow night. So until we meet again, please bless each and every one of us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. All right. So remember to join us
bless.
tomorrow. Remember to share. You can like this. Subscribe to the page, guys, the YouTube page for the Troy SDA Church YouTube page. All right. We are going to try to get everything up on the Facebook page as well. So we're slowly building that and getting that up. But for right now, we will see you guys soon. Thank you guys for joining us. Thanks for your questions and comments.
God bless.